episode is sponsored by Reiz Tech, end-to-end IT solutions for your business growth.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Gintaute. Hi.
Hello, how are
Nice
you?
to see you here. Things I'm good. All is great. Hopefully, you too. And today we met for a specific reason to have a chat around intercultural communication and exploring how that might help or not within remote teams. But before start, just to briefly introduce Gintaute, what you're doing and what are your main roles. So you're working as a product owner as well as a business analyst, as I understood, in Reiz Tech company. But maybe you would like to add something about yourself. What do you do after that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Simon. Thank you for having me. So you introduced me as Gintaute. That's my Lithuanian name. I go by Gia most these days. It's been
Okay.
quite a while. So hi, everyone again. Gia. Yes, originally from Lithuania, but I've been traveling around and working online for many years now. I'm not going to expand on my journey, but yes, right now I work as a PO and a BA in Reiz Tech, but I'm also working on so many different things. And I think a lot of people would relate to the fact that you cannot do one thing these days. You have to follow your passions, do the things that you really love. So I've been really passionate about remote work. I always advocate remote work, even before COVID, that's been my life way before that. And I'm very excited to talk about the remote work and remote teams and how it helps us with communication.
And that's very nice intro into the topic, actually, because I was really curious how remote work and that intercultural communication is related to you personally. I mean, how is that important to you? Why is that important to you?
It's kind of funny, to be honest. So I started in a regular job in logistics and supply chain a long, long time ago, like 10 years ago. And the remote work was not a really thing at the time. I think the only people that worked remotely at the time were developers. So I went to China to teach English just because I wanted to travel. Like I couldn't figure out how to get a remote work in business. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? So I became an English teacher. And then once I finished a few years there, I was like, okay, so what do I do next now? So I could still travel, but also work in business rather than, teaching English. My first thought was like, okay, you got to become a developer. And I was like, nope, that's just not going to happen. It's too complicated, too difficult. Tech
It's
world
not
seemed like
me. Yeah.
yeah, kind of. I was like, I could totally see myself doing the tech side, but I'm like, maybe I'm a little bit too old to switch. And it was quite scary. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? And actually, I realized, I could mentor other people. I've been mentoring other people for a long time anyway, but I never considered it as a job. It was more like a passion. So then I became a life coach, slowly went into business coaching, like social media marketing. And eventually, I still wanted to switch my career to tech. So that's why it's kind of like ironic that I'm here now, not a developer, but I work with the developers, and most of my clients were developers for quite a long time now. So yeah,
So
I'm definitely very
trying to run
passionate about it.
away, but still get not back there.
Yeah. You just know that the universe is kind of sorting out for you, even if you think,
Exactly.
oh, maybe it's too difficult. No, it's not. You can do it.
Things were sorted out, but I'm happy and glad that you're here within your role and you like it. And as I understood, you're actually part of that remote work, so to say, within your own experience right now. Um, I do wonder, like, if to start it from the maybe a bit more things that are challenging with remote work as well as within the communication. I mean, usually the teams within these days, after the COVID, most likely teams are consisting of different people from different locations, different cultures, and naturally teams has to work remotely. What do you think what's challenging within that, from your perspective?
Okay, yeah. So maybe the first thing we probably gotta define a little bit more is remote work, right? Because right
Hmm.
now, after COVID, it has become like a thing that everyone talks about. But in reality, like digital nomading, where you work and travel and work remotely, not depending on the office or depending on the country that you're in, has been popular even before COVID. But now it has become like everyone knows what that is. However, we the digital nomads usually really separate the difference between remote work, work from home, and hybrid work, right? And we usually get quite annoyed with the companies that just advertise remote work, and then you read what it is, and you're like, this is not remote work. This is either work from home or hybrid work. So in my case, I'm definitely going to be talking about like remote work, where you don't have to be in the country or in a place where your company is. And it definitely relates to communication a lot. So I think these are kind of two separate topics, but they interlink so much.
Mhm.
I think in general, in today's world, we have, I don't know, friends from all over the world, colleagues from all over the world, and learning how to communicate with others in different cultures, it's the hardest thing because what might be normal or regular for you might be completely out of sync for someone in
Absolutely.
a different country. You probably have faced that in your work as well.
Absolutely. And as you're right, so different cultures does make it a bit more difficult because once you used to work locally, I mean, within the same city, within the same, building, room, then you can firstly see the people in the same way. You can see their emotions, reactions, and remote work does add a bit of a challenges, difficulty to that because you not always see the people. You cannot see the full perspective of a person. You just usually see the face or you don't see it at all. And apart from that, as I said, cultural differences is a huge thing because once you've been working in one place, you usually didn't have the chance to see that many people. But now things are changing. I do wonder from your perspective, what is so difficult within the cultural differences? Why it is difficult for teams actually to uh, cooperate nicely and achieve great results?
hmm I think it's probably the common sense because we all use common sense as common sense. But in reality, common sense depends on the culture. Like when I went to China, right, the common sense for me was not at all common sense for them. And the working culture, the expectations, the communication way, right? And even to be honest, if we take our culture, the Lithuanian culture, right? When I moved to UK to live, everyone kept saying how I was like really direct or really abrupt. And I was like, what do you mean? This is like, I don't have time to chit chat, right? I have work to do. And it was really hard for me to be like, oh, okay, no, that's not how this works in this culture
Mhm.
or in another culture. And I think you just have to really listen to the social cues and kind of learn about the culture and what are their expectations for you. So I think in international or remote teams, that's very hard because you don't have a baseline, right? Like you don't know what are we basing it on? Are we basing it on the country of the company? Are we basing
Mhm.
it on the majority of the team? Like, how do we understand common sense? So I think that's the biggest challenge. Like, how do we define what is common sense? And I think in our teams, we had definitely quite a few discussions on the ways of working, just because, we all see expectations differently.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned really nicely, common sense is different. And as well, assumptions are being done differently because we have a different common sense. That doesn't help. Absolutely. Um, I do wonder how, from the perspective of a teams, yet if to stick a bit with the teams,
hmm
um, so cultural differences most likely give some kind of flavor to the team dynamics. So how you see team dynamics being shifted, adjusted with these different cultural interferences, so to say.
hmm I'm a little bit biased because my teams, I've got three teams, and everyone is really well versed in international
Yeah.
space. So I think we're all pretty good at like communicating with each other. So I haven't seen the things that I would expect to see where, the cultures don't agree with each other. They kind of face a lot of challenges. But I can imagine how, let's say when I was teaching English, I still had challenges of how do I explain something? How do I ask a question that us in some part of the world like to discuss, but in other culture that's a taboo, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we get to that? And I think it relates to like remote work as well, or remote teams in your case. Um, because in remote teams, like if you ask someone, could you do something for me? Right? It could be normal because you're delegating, right? Like you have a team and you work with each other and you kind of delegate work or you decide on who
Mm-hmm.
is doing what. Um, but some people can get offended. They're like, well, you're not my boss. You cannot tell me what to do, right? And because in their culture, telling someone what to do or what they could do for you might be offensive. Or vice versa. In some cultures, I know they're actually expecting really clear guidance. Whereas let's say in the work that in the team that I'm working in, we expect everyone else to do the job. You know, we don't expect you to be told what to do. It's more like
Exactly.
coming from you, right? More like a startup vibe, where we all pitch in and work for the common goal. And that is definitely challenging with some cultures where people are like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right? Because they expect a very clear direction. For them, that's a black and white situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And that's not always the culture. I would say as well, it's a maturity because culture might differentiate in this part. I mean, different cultures working together for some longer time, they shape expectations better for each other, and that makes life a bit easier. But absolutely, it's a very good example. I've been as well experiencing very similar perspectives, as you said. So tell me what to do, someone says, and others. So let's figure it out together. Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit to what you said about the teams.
Hmm.
Like, we all have different ways of working, like the way we operate. But then when we come together, how do we become a cohesive unit? Like, especially in remote teams, right? We don't get to meet each other. We don't get to hang out in a coffee shop after
Yeah.
work, right? So we don't get that face-to-face interaction. And I think a lot of people around the world are kind of blaming remote work for the loss of contact, right? Which it can be for sure. But I think at the end of the day now, we have so many tools to prevent that. Like, yes, we cannot meet face to face, but we don't have to be only stuck with work hours or with work
Hmm.
time, right? Like, you also have to invest the time to get to know your team and get to know, I don't know, the strengths and weaknesses of each of your team members. And
Absolutely.
you can only do that in like free time activities, not the work activities, I think.
And that's a really nice next step into the other perspective that I wanted to check with you regarding these strategies for effective work within remote teams and within
Hmm.
different cultures. So you mentioned one of the things that, yeah, once we cannot meet, then what we have to do, we have to use, sorry, look for a time outside of working hours. What
Hmm.
are the other strategies or perhaps even tooling that you think is really helpful within these days?
Well, something that we've kind of started doing is remote escape rooms with our team. It's been quite fun. I haven't known that they exist, and then we had to figure out a team building, and we kind of found them. So that was great. It
Remote
really felt like
escape
a
rooms. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
hear about it.
They're really fun actually, and there is quite a few options right now. So it's not as
Okay.
boring. I think when they started doing them, they were, very basic, like Word format or Excel format. But
Hmm.
now they're quite interactive, and I'm kind of hoping to see that in virtual space later on because I think there's a lot of potential for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but for now, I think is just we also have coffee breaks or tea breaks. I call them tea breaks. Some of my friends call it coffee breaks because I don't drink coffee. So yeah, we just kind of get together and chat. And you would think that might make us unproductive. I think it actually makes us more productive or more efficient because when you know the person and you know what makes them tick, what they're passionate about, I think that's what makes you effective in teamwork as well. Like when I joined the company, before that, I was running my own business, right? So I thought it's going to be a challenge to join a company and work in a team and kind of have everyone working in a bigger space. And I think I took such a big or long time to talk to every one of my team members because talking to them, it's not about what they do. Like I know what they can do, right? They're really good and they deliver whatever is needed for the business. But what I wanted to know is what makes them tick. Like if they are having a hard day, how I'm going to talk to them and how I'm going to connect with them so we could both deliver to
Hmm.
whatever work we are doing. So I think just approaching remote team the same way as we approach normal or regular or before COVID sort of team is the way to go. Like just because we are behind a screen does not mean we cannot connect as people. But also the fact that we should have calls. Like I know we all try to avoid a lot of long calls, and me too. But just chatting, I think, is not enough. Like I think async work is great, but I do believe like if you really want to connect with your team, you still have to have like face interactions, whether it's virtual or face to face.
Yeah, and probably as you mentioned, so from the perspective that you've just said, what I hear and capture that it's mostly around the soft perspective, yeah, of that we need to get to know the people. We need to be able to build the trust. Once we are over that, then we need to continuously keep that communication ongoing, as you said, with the coffee, tea breaks, or any other meetings and events that you might have. But as well from, so we agree that that soft part is really quite important for building any kind of team, any kind of organization. But how about the so to say, day-to-day activities and the working environment, the tools? I mean, we used to meet together and take a piece of paper, draw whatever we believe we want to build, and now it's completely different. I mean, so where to draw? What tools we're going to use? Is there anything that you think or feel it's really effective that's supposed to be used, or recommendations to be used?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think it's probably a little bit harder for me to answer because I work in Scrum. So in Scrum, we already have quite a few rituals,
Okay.
that we have. So let's say we have the daily stand-ups, which are 15 minutes a day, where we catch up and talk about what happened and what we're working on. So I think when I still worked in Waterfall a long time ago, right, we didn't have things like that. It was all face to face, and I think people just naturally assume that everyone is on top of their work. But I think in Scrum, that's really good because every day I can see, okay, somebody needs help, or somebody needs to collaborate with someone else, right? Or maybe this is not clear for me. How do I figure this out? So then I know right away who to talk to. So I think daily interactions are really good, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes. Then what else do we have? I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously in Scrum, we have the planning, the refinements, the retros. And actually, retro is probably another thing that I definitely recommend. No matter how you call it, whether it's Scrum or Agile or any other project type, I think it's important to check in of what's the feeling within the team, what's lacking, what's working, what can we change, right? But also realizing that a lot of people are probably not always open about what they need. I had this conversation quite a few times with my leaders as well. It's not so easy. Not everyone is really comfortable being direct and being open. Okay, this is not okay. This is okay. This is great. So I think, it's probably the person in the team. Maybe in our case, it's a Scrum Master, but it could be anyone, right? It could be just any of the team members, I guess.
Yeah.
There has to be someone who is kind of noticing what's the vibe in the team, what's the cohesiveness? Are we delivering, or are we delivering and then feeling exhausted doing it, right? So I don't think we should take it for granted, which most of us, I guess, do, and we did in the past. So I would recommend really to have check-ins. They don't have to be every week, Yeah, fair enough. That's probably quite taxing. But at least every 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks, I would say just measure your temperature in the team and see how everyone's feeling. Do you do those? Do you relate to that?
Absolutely. I completely relate. I mean, what you said here, reflecting back to cultural differences and the exploration, so to say, of different cultures. And what really resonates with me, what you said, is that people are not always willing to open up. And it might be cultural differences. It might be as well personality things. I mean, once we meet face to face in real life, and we sit to each other, then we as a humans are more often willing to open up and actually share what's bothering us, or what's not working, why I'm so happy or why I'm not. And once you have these remote calls and remote conversations, it might be so much more difficult to actually read the audience. And as I said, someone needs to figure out, so what is the current situation, how everyone feels, to do the check-ins. But it becomes so much harder, specifically if the camera is turned off. It's good that we have camera on, by the way, right now. But if it would be without camera, it would be so much more difficult actually to read the room, read the temperature. And that's extra challenges, I think, that brings into the game. And maybe one of the suggestions, or the first things to be done within remote teams and whatever cultures you're part of, I would say, start using video cameras. It helps a lot to understand what's the situation within the room. But as you said, all other things like check-ins, getting the understanding of different emotions, feelings, it's really quite important, because we are all humans at the end, and we are all vulnerable. We all have our families and lives, and that might be helping or not necessary within different days. That's a good perspective. Yeah. You wanted to
I
add
love,
something?
yeah, I love what you said about personalities, and I think this is a great thing to bring up here
Mm-hmm.
because I've noticed that sometimes we say that everyone has to be outgoing. Everyone is like seeking something, right? And I actually really disagree with that. Like, I think we must normalize that not everyone is an extrovert. Being introvert makes you a specialist as well, right? Depending on what you need. It's like you cannot have 10 leaders in a room because nothing will get done, right? You need a few leaders, quite a few
Mm-hmm.
followers, right? And same with introverts and extroverts and people who are very outgoing and out there and being loud, right? And the ones who are just like, okay, I got you. I'm gonna get this done, right? So the doers and the thinkers and the visionaries, I think there has to be a mix. But I've been noticing that like a lot of companies and people, they're focusing so much on like everyone is being that leader. But I think leader by definition is not an extrovert. Leader by definition can be anyone, right? Depending on what you need, what the team needs as well. And I think that relates to personalities a lot. And when I worked in Johnson& Johnson a long time ago, we did a caller-based personality tests in a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember what the name of it was, but basically we did some personality tests and we all got collars, right? Red for very outgoing leader, kind
Mm-hmm.
of doer sort of personality, right? The blue for a more technical, analytical person, and so on and so forth. And we used to, well, we got these bricks as a gift from the company, and you had to keep them on the table at a time. It was like a face-to-face work. Uh, and you have to put the ones that are prominent in your personality on top. So then the person who comes to you, they know how to approach you. If you're red, don't chit chat with me, please. Like, let's just talk about work. If you're yellow, let's talk about the day, and then I'll ask you what I need, right? If you're analytical, maybe I'll have to come with data to ask you the question. And that kind of approach allows everyone to be involved in the way that they need, right? It's not about what you need, it's about what that person needs in terms of communication. And I think for remote work and the teams, it's even more important. Like we might not be able to have colors next to our faces, but like if you know what kind of personality you're talking to, you
Yeah.
know how to ask the question. Oh, there you go. You got some colors.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
that's really good point, and that helps to know people. One of the examples that popped to my head once you said about different personalities doesn't not necessarily help, but we need to figure out how to work with them. Um, Example that I faced recently, there was a team of or group of people that some of them were really introverts and they usually don't share too much, not share too much of their emotions, not share too much of agreement, disagreement. It's not that the team members are afraid of, or not that they don't have trust because they've been working quite a long time together. But what happened actually that the ones that wanted to hear from others were always feeling, that they were not heard. So what the team decided to do instead, the ones that were introverts said that it's not always comfortable for us to speak, or it's okay for us to not to speak. So they figure out that within the tools that they use, simply they use the tools Teams. It might be Zoom, it might be Google Meets, whatever you use. There are different reactions, emotions that you can press, and that helps a lot to read what is the feeling, what is the understanding. So little thing, very small thing, very small improvement, but it completely changed the energy in the room because the ones that are extroverts were more into open conversations. They could get the understanding how others are feeling, whether we need to stop a bit, we need to dig deeper into the conversation, or if it's completely fine and let's move on. Not only with the thumbs up, thumbs down, but you can have many other emotions out there. It's a very small trick, but I believe it helps for not only remote teams, but different personality people, as well as different personalities, of course, relates to different cultures. So everything is sort of related somehow.
absolutely. You know, the human factor is like one thing that no matter how much time we are trying to understand it, it's not possible, right? We all change, times change, personality changes, cultures change as well. We all evolve. But yeah, I really relate to what you said. I think it's all about the team, understanding what the team needs. Um, and then, of course, using the tools, right? And we have such a variety of tools now. I think you asked about the tools before. So
Hmm.
Teams, love the Teams now. Video calls if needed, right? Depending on how
Hmm.
many of those calls you have. I'm sure after 8 hours of video calls, you probably want to have a
Yeah,
break as well. You can probably
Absolutely.
relate to that. Yeah. But I think like we use a lot of brainstorming. So I use like Miro boards or Mural or, some other
Mm.
tools online. That really helps because then you can just like drop ideas. And I was actually in a conference once, and they used can't remember the name of the tool again. Maybe we can post it after,
Hmm.
if anything. And what they did a conference, but then part of the conference was networking, but not networking on Zoom like we usually do.
Yeah,
But it was like people sitting on little tables, and you can actually just drop in on a little table
yeah,
and hear
yeah,
three people. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I was like, we could totally do that in the team, just split up into
absolutely.
little.
Like virtual space for the team to meet, and simply
Hmm.
you see the visuals and you click you join the call, which is pretty similar, pretty simple, but although it gives a bit different understanding. I can be here or there and visualize the virtual space. So that's really great. And all the tools you mentioned, absolutely, I agree
Yeah,
with you. And maybe there are much more that we yet didn't try, but within the time,
absolutely.
probably there will be more evolution within the tools. I do wonder, actually, we spent some time talking about the team setup. How is it difficult, or it's what's challenging for the team? What strategies we do have? How about leadership support? I mean, intercultural communication, is there something that leadership could do to, from your perspective, what do you think that could make things more, I don't know, easier or simpler, better understood?
Hmm. Kind of interesting you asked that because when I was looking for the tech job, I
Hmm.
wasn't looking as much as what the job is looking for as much as I was looking for a company. I was like,
Okay.
I'm going to read about the company and be like, is that the people I want to work with? Is that the culture that I want to be in, right? And now in Reiz Tech, like honestly, I just have so many amazing people that I like to talk about anything. They're colleagues, yes, first, but also friends, and I've never thought I could say that because I think before I was never quite used to having that. Like, everyone's kind of just work friends most more so. But yes, I think now we can learn a lot about the companies and the culture before we work for them. And I think that's a huge deal when you're looking for a new place or a new activity that you want to start. It's all about people. Like pick the people that resonate with you because you might be great at your job, but if you're not going to have the people that there is this just a vibe,
Hmm.
right? And you like each other, I think that makes it so much better and so much easier.
Yeah, and the culture where you join, of course, it's very important, but as well, I do wonder. So, what do you think leaders need to do to create that opening
Hmm.
culture so that employees would like to join? So, for them, it would be easier to communicate, interact with each other. Maybe there's
Absolutely.
something as I don't know, starting guide. You yourself, you're like a leader, yeah, for the team and for the company. What
Hmm.
would be your tips? Yeah.
I think it's a two-way street. Like we cannot put everything on the leaders and say that leaders should guide us, but at the same time, we cannot put everything on the followers, right? The people who follow,
Hmm.
because yes, all of us should be outgoing and getting what we need, right? But eventually, I think it's a compromise, right? The leaders should be teaching or helping when they feel like the team needs,
Hmm.
and then the team has to teach themselves when they feel like they're not getting it as well, right? Nobody's perfect. Like no leader can actually do everything at once. So I think we all have to have leaders, and I really like the idea of being a leader without a title. It really doesn't matter what kind of job you have or what do you do, right? You can lead by example. If you
Mm.
see that something could be changed, then you should initiate that change, right? Even if it's not part of your job description or part of something you're comfortable doing, right? You can just learn and try. But I think the key is really to have that open communication. So first thing to not just have it written down as a company's slogan or whatever, right? But also talk about it all the time, reinforce it. We humans, we need to hear it at least what, 3, 6 times to to learn it, to
Maybe
listen
even
to it.
more. Yeah.
Maybe more, yeah. The more we repeat, the better. I think having like open door policy, like we talked a lot about open door policy when we had face-to-face work, but now we somehow lost that in the remote virtual work. But in reality, it's the same. Like you should know that you can virtually knock on someone's teams and say, you know what, how about we have that coffee break? I want to talk. I want some help, or I'm not sure where I'm going, or the opposite. I want to lead this. How about you give me a chance, right? So I think the leaders must open that channel saying that,
Mhm.
yes, I'm always here for you. You can come and talk to me, uh, and I will talk to you as well. And they come to you and kind of get your opinion, right? Get your
Yeah,
input.
that's really interesting perspective. Indeed, I never thought about it. Open door policy was so popular, as I said, once everyone were working in the same place, but like there's no doors, there are no
Yeah,
doors anymore. So what do we do? And
yeah.
as I said, you need to create that trust, welcoming environment that it's okay just to have a chat. You don't need to,
Mm-hmm.
look for other ways of doing that. So that's really good. That's a good tip for any remote leaders or for any leaders overall these days. Doesn't matter if you work remotely, probably, or on a hybrid mode, as you mentioned at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What do
Yeah.
you think about the productivity of the teams? Because we have remote environment, we have different cultures. How does it help
Mm-hmm.
or not from your perspective?
I'm probably going to be a little bit controversial in that because, like,
Go ahead.
I'm a huge fan of remote work, like,
Yeah.
and I don't think remote work has to be a 9 to 5 kind of job, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that people have the same amount of productivity. So, like, I personally don't think that people can work 8 hours a day right away. Because of the focus, because of the distractions, because of the physical needs to move
Mm-hmm.
and to get up and go. So I believe that each person should define their own productivity, and then they have to have very clear expectations from the company. What do they have to deliver? And if they do that in 2 hours, amazing. If they do that in eight, that is great, right? Like as long as they deliver, I don't think it really matters like how long you're working. And I really like those initiatives of having like 6 hour work days or
Mm-hmm.
4 days work week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whichever it is, or let's say longer days, but longer weekends, shorter week, whatever it is, like I think the companies should try it out because at the end of the day, the people are not driven by hours and they're not driven by money. Money helps, but they're not driven by money. They're driven by different things, right? And I actually talked to my dad about this. We are from a different generation, right? And we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about motivation. How do you motivate people? And I was saying to him, do you know what your employees value? Because it might not be money. You're offering them more money to work harder, but they don't want money. They want time with family. They want longer holiday. They want a day off for their, I don't know, kids event at school,
Yeah.
right? Their motivation might be very different from yours. And as a leader, I think it's your responsibility to understand what your team is motivated by. And if you do, then telling them, you know what, how about we work this weekend all together? We, put all the effort in, but then we have the next week off, right? Like, I mean, this is a simple example, but nobody, or at least very little uh, companies, very few companies do that. And I think there should be more of that. Like, I think now, most of the younger generation, we are motivated by intrinsic value of what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the product that we want to deliver. So we are not motivated by like waking up, going to work, having a job, getting paid, and then going home. At least I think a lot of us
Yeah.
are not, right? We need more than
Absolutely.
that. So I recommend the leaders to really listen to what people want and then communicate the goal that we all should achieve, kind of like in a startup, right? Where you have one goal and you put all your effort in getting it
And
out
that
there.
alignment. Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly. How was it for you? Like, I know you have quite a few things that you worked on. So, um,
Yeah.
what helps you? Hmm.
It's indeed not a simple answer to this question, but from the perspective that I have so far, the effectiveness is not that simple as well as you said. It combines from different things and might be, as you said, one of the things is motivation. And uh, it's nice to see that organizations are more and more opening up for at least hybrid mode that you can try out working from home. While at the same time, working from home for some people actually helps a lot to focus. For others, it doesn't at all because you have a small kids running around, for example, or someone is constantly pinging. There's I don't know, home renovation happening close by, and you hear all the noises, and you simply need a good working environment. And indeed, listening to probably your employees, it's as equally important as listening to probably your customers, whatever you're doing, whatever project you're creating. And sometimes we do forget that, but it's a really good reminder that we need not only to listen to the customers, clients, what they want, but what my employees want, because they're actually helping me to create and get that value at the end, get the money. Yeah, because we're all working that at the end, the companies would get some kind of profits,
Hmm.
and that probably would help out a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, delivering whatever is expected, right? I mean, we can talk about freedom as much as we want. If we don't deliver, that's not work, right? Like we are working to deliver something, whatever it is in the company that you work for. So yes, we can, as employees, I think we can ask for a lot. But we also have to be ready to deliver, right? We have to understand that we're all working for the common goal, and that is a client, and that is profit, which means that how do we achieve it? What does that cost to us? That is something that you have to define for yourself. Then the company has to define it,
Mhm.
and then you have to align the two, right? And if it's aligned, that's awesome. If it's not, then maybe you have to rethink whether this is your priority, or this is a place for you.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, that's usually forgotten. We have so much of the status quo of like, this is work. We come here, we do this, and we leave, right? And I get that question a lot, like, how come you do like 15 things at once, right? Because I have a full-time job, I have mentoring, I have meditations, and all the stuff that I do. And they're like, how do you do that, right? How do you have time? Obviously, I don't have kids, so that helps because I have more time, more free time. But I think it's because I'm not driven by a definition of work, right? I define what work is for me. Whether it's paid or not, it's a different matter. But the fact is, you have to define like what drives you, what makes your life make sense to you, what are your non-negotiables. And
Mhm.
if you're okay with that, then it doesn't matter if I have to work 12 hours a day. That's okay. Like sometimes that's needed. But you got to be like intrinsically motivated to do it, not just feel like you have to and you have no choice.
Yeah, motivations are really, really important thing. And as you said, the work might become actually fun thing to do
Hmm.
if you find the right place for yourself
Yeah.
and figure out what motivates, drives you forward.
And I love
Um,
what you said about family.
mhm.
Sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, you said that not everyone can work remotely, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's important to note, right? Uh, After COVID, there has been a lot of discussions about this remote work, and everyone's doing this and everyone's doing that, right? But I think we should go back to before COVID time where it was your choice. Like you should define what kind of work you want. If you want remote work, like for me that's not negotiable, then I'm looking for a place, and I am in a place that allows me to do so. If I had too many distractions at home, I would
Mhm.
go and find a place where I can work hybrid, right? Or who can offer me a co-working space to work from. And I think we have to normalize the fact that there is no such thing as great work for productivity, great work for teamwork. That's
Mhm.
nonsense. Like the great work for a person, or the highest productivity for a person, is defined by that person, right? For you, that might be morning because you have kids. You have to wake up anyway. You wake up and you go to work. For someone else, like I love nights, I can easily work at 2, 3 a.m. and I'll be so happy, right? So is one of the methods better than others? No, why? Like just because the society used to say that for 50 years doesn't mean we
Absolutely.
still have to stick to that.
And I like the way that you're saying, let's define the new normal, because there is no normal in general.
Hmm.
Each and every decision is basically supposed to be done by the person that is actually within the situation, rather uh, by someone strictly saying the rules. But that's what the companies probably are trying to do more and more. Give that freedom, although not
Hmm.
everybody, but with that freedom, then people can choose whether they would like to work remotely, evenings, mornings, whatever continents and places. And
Hmm.
that probably helps a lot with the motivation, I assume. And uh, for the example, one of the other perks that becomes more and more popular is workation, where you can work at the same time have a small vacation from outside of the year that you're usually living in. And
Yes.
how it is for you? How you see this perspective?
Well, I'm in Albania right now, so I am definitely a good example
That's
of
fantastic. Yeah.
what workation is. Yes, I might not always call it workation. I just call it remote work, right? But
Mhm.
yes, workation is definitely something that a lot of companies started offering. And of course, just to note, everyone has to make sure they follow the laws of remote work and all the workation and stuff, right? Because there are quite a few of them, and not everything is defined yet. And usually, digital nomads are pretty upset about the fact that we don't have enough definition or enough freedom of what's legal, what's illegal, what you can do, what you cannot do. But it's getting better. One day we will have those laws in place. Um, I think it's great to give people an opportunity to try something new. And I had a mentee recently, and she would love to start working remotely, and she was a bit worried about it. And I was saying, don't try to imagine you're going to go to Bali and work for a month. That is a really difficult change. That's going to be like changing your whole life. How about you do 5 days in Lisbon, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just do a little thing where
Simple
it's
here.
still same platform, same mentality, same mindset, different city. Do the little things first. If you like it and you can prove to your leaders that you can do your work, right? Being somewhere else and they don't need to check on you or they need to
Mm-hmm.
look for you and, where is she and what's she doing? Then why not? I'm sure they're going to prove it. But of course, we need data to prove that that's working, that it is possible.
Yeah, so that's a huge perk, as I said, but people need to get used to it, as you said, both from the officials' perspective and all the legal things that needs to be concluded. Of course, personality perspective, and each of us are different. For some, it might work. For some, it might not. I personally as well tried actually one day to work from the other country because it happened that I planned my vacation and I thought, why not work that one day from the other country instead of flying in there and just doing nothing? Because for that one day there was nothing
Hmm.
planned, and it
And
worked quite nice because yeah, I was prepared for it. It wasn't something special. I didn't
hmm
expect something special, but indeed you need to try it out, and it might really nicely work as you're saying for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And we talk about vacation, usually we think about these exciting places, but that can also mean going to the seaside in Lithuania and work, right? I mean, like, I've done
Yeah,
that a few
different
times where I
setting.
went from the capital, to Palanga or something. And I loved it. I was like, that's an interesting change because normally I work from abroad. But it was just great. And I'm sure even the people with families can do that, right? Because it's not too far and it doesn't take too much time. And the kids also have holidays. So it's possible kind of for everyone if you want to, right? I think at the end of the day, it's all about we should not force remote work on anyone. The remote work has been a
It's a
choice before
choice.
COVID, and it
Yeah,
should be a choice. Yeah.
exactly. I really like what you're saying, that it is a choice. It is a choice both for the person, for the company, for the society in general, and you just
Hmm.
need to choose it, whether it's for you or not.
Definitely.
Really
And I
nice to
think,
chat with
uh
you. And
you too.
please share the last moment that you had, as our time is almost up.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that I really admire my company's leaders because they're always trying something new. Some things fail, some things succeed. It doesn't matter, right? But they're always trying something out and seeing how do we employees respond to it? Is it working? Do we want to have this? Yes, great, awesome. Let's add this to our lifestyle. We don't want this? Okay, we don't need this. Let's go back to normal, right? Because like not every change is a good change. But I think the people in the companies have to be open to try it out. We can always go back, right? Like the safe space, that comfort zone, we can keep it. Like nobody's going to take it away, right? Hopefully
Absolutely.
not. So let's just like normalize trying something new and asking from the employee perspective to get something new, like not being afraid to say, you know what, let me do this for 2 weeks. I'll prove to you I can be just as productive, just as effective, and then we'll talk about it, right? If you can prove that, great, then they can trust you and they can continue like helping you out in that way, right? Same from the employer's perspective. Like, if you want to change something, also talk to your employees. Why are you doing it? Like, what's the reason for it to change? And if you're
Mhm.
changing it, if you can convince us to believe in it first, more likely the change management is going to be easier. And then we get used to it and we're like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, right? Because change management is a really hard thing, whether it's remote work, remote teams, international teams. We got to introduce why change is happening and why we want this. And I think it goes both ways, both employer perspective and employee perspective. So I think we should be daring, but also respectful, listen, right?
Mhm.
And talk at the same time. And I think that's what makes the effective, productive remote work, teamwork, and also the communication, whichever culture you're in.
That's it. That's great. Thank you, Gintaute, so much for your time. Or should I call you Gia, as you said?
Yeah.
It was a
Thank you so
pleasure to
much.
have a chat and so many different perspective experiences. Thanks for being here with us, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.